Today I'm joined by Kathryn Lancioni, CEO and founder of Presenting Perfection. Kathryn, you are literally in the business of helping people build their personal brands, crafting it, nurturing their personal brands. What is the case for actually creating one for yourself? Why would someone do this?
These days, personal branding is becoming more and more important. The reason being that there's so much noise between social media and traditional media and everything else that's going on, that in order for people to try to create an identity for themselves in the world, the personal brand is becoming more and more important. The question that many people have is, well, what's the point? Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is, ultimately, it's up to each person to decide what the point of it is. Mm-hmm. If you are someone that's happy in their career where they are mm-hmm. and just want to kind of let people know where you are, what you're doing, that's one form of a personal brand. If you want to extend your brand and build it and sort of position yourself as an influencer or leader within your market segment, mm-hmm. that's another type of personal brand. Mm-hmm. And then there are some people fresh out of college, blank slate, blank page, mm-hmm. who have little to no digital footprint. And for them, it's the biggest challenge, but it's also the biggest opportunity, because not only are you creating a footprint and a brand, you're really creating your whole professional identity. So personal branding is something that comes into play for various people at various stages in their life.
I think no matter what your objectives are, I would think that it would be useful to do that.
Absolutely.
You had in one of your blog posts that I was reading yesterday about this very thing, you credited Jeff Bezos with saying, your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So for that, it's useful. So where do you start? Okay, so how do we begin? Let's say I am a blank slate.
Yeah. If you're, it's sort of envious being the blank slate, because you really get to write and dictate what you say about yourself. You kind of take leadership of yourself.
You narrate your own story.
You do narrate your own story. Exactly, the business of what I'm in.
Right.
So the important things to think about is really you have to start fundamentally by making a list. And it sounds old school, but I'm a big paper person. But if you want, go on the computer, do it on your phone, whatever is best for you. But you got to make a list of your assets. Like, what are the things that you really, really want to advertise about yourself? And then also make a list of the things that you don't want to advertise, because when you're creating your personal brand, you don't and shouldn't talk about stuff that you're not comfortable talking about. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, which kind of goes in concert with the pros, is what's the best way of bringing those things to light? A lot of people will try to do things that aren't second nature to them. Mm-hmm. And when you're creating a personal brand, creating a digital profile, an e-identity, whatever you want to call it, you want to focus on the things that you're good at. And then you want to focus on techniques and tactics to make those things look even better. So the first thing really is thinking about, okay, who am I and how do I want people to know me in the marketplace?
What kind of questions do you ask yourself? Like, I mean, you just mentioned a pros
and
cons list.
It's a very good question. I mean, it's one of those things like, well, who am I? How to Bezos, what do people say about me when I'm not in the room? Mm-hmm. What do people say at me when I've left and I've made a comment? And it sounds really goofy, but a great place to start is by asking those people. Ask your friends, ask your partner. If you have kids, ask your kids, what do you think of me? Your kids are probably going to give you a bit of a snarky answer. But, but at the end of the day, they may give you one or two valid points. But if you're in a position where you have peers that you trust, ask them what they think of you. And then reflect upon that and then think about, what would you say about yourself? And what you want to do is kind of marry your own pros with those that others observe in you. Mm-hmm. And that's how you come up with those core brand values about yourself.
So, So you have to be honest with yourself.
You
have to rely on those who will actually be honest with you.
Yes.
And then when you're thinking about it depends on your objectives, but when you're thinking about audience, how do you kind of get yourself in the mindset to present yourself in the best way to whatever audience you want to get in front of, whether it's looking for a job or advancing.
And that's another thing is once you come up with this list of pros, list of assets that you want to stress about yourself, you have to think about, well, what's the right audience for them? You can't and you shouldn't talk to everyone about everything about you, right? Because some things are going to be attractive and interesting to some people, and to others, they're going to be a complete turnoff. Mm-hmm. So what I always tell people is to think in terms of three. Okay, three things about you that you want to share. I call it 3 about me. I use it when I work with entrepreneurs. I use it when I work with people that are just getting out of college, and I even use it when I'm working with little kids who are trying to sort of learn how to introduce themselves to other people. What are 3 things? And you really have to think about who is the audience that you're talking to come up with that list. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be in a situation where you're advertising your brand to a group of peers, it's one thing. It's another thing where if you're going the nonprofit route or going to volunteering stuff and you're going to share yourself or share your assets, what are three things that would be attractive to that group about you?
Right.
You can't and you shouldn't tell everyone everything about you.
I was thinking about LinkedIn profiles.
Yeah.
I think you had written something about this, where a job description or your job title rather just won't suffice anymore, right? So that would be a good place to think about where your 3 About Me
It is.
lives.
And the thing about the LinkedIn profile is that when LinkedIn first started, it was very much a place where we all put our resumes. You had a picture, you had a resume, and it was kind of a list. As LinkedIn, as social media has evolved, is how LinkedIn has evolved. And what's happened now, or what's occurring now, is people are really using the LinkedIn platform as a place to showcase what they want to showcase, not just the jobs they've had, but the skills they've had, the experiences that they've had, and what they've gained from those experiences. So, I don't just list myself as CEO of this or founder of that or professor of this. It's more of a communications expert with a knowledge of X, Y, and Z based upon all these experiences that brought that together. So the LinkedIn profile, you shouldn't just use it as a place to throw your resume and throw a picture and hope that people are going to come inbound, because they're not.
Right.
You really need to look at it as a platform where you can talk about those things that you want to talk about and showcase your unique experiences that support those.
Good, and I want to get to that in a bit, but I want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about building
your
your
brand.
story,
Yeah,
narrating your
absolutely.
story.
Yeah.
So we did talk about making a list, your pros and cons.
Yep.
What kind of assets, or you talked about building a narrative or your copy, right?
Right.
What kind of things do we get together? Where do we start, right? So we've got our pros and cons.
You got your list
we've
of
got
pros
some
and cons.
feedback.
Yeah, you've got your list of pros and cons.
Right.
Well, actually, even before that, you have to have a goal.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to build a brand without a goal. So you have to think about, why am I doing this? Okay. And it actually may take you a while to figure that out. And if it does, it's not a big deal. It takes everyone a long time.
Yes.
Then the second thing is, okay, if this is my goal, then what's the roadmap to get there? And that's where that pro and con list comes up. Is, okay, here's where I want to be. Here's where I'm going to start. So what are the 3 to 5 things about me that I think are going to get me there?
Got it.
All right. Once you have that list, what you have to think about is, okay, what's the best way for me to advertise these pros and cons? What's the best strategy for me to put together to take me from point A to point C, if you want to call it that? What's that B area going to be comprised of? You want me to go further with that?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So when you think about it, in this world today, we have lots of outlets for taking ourselves from A to C, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that you can leverage techniques that are best for you. Okay. There's everything from, if you want to call them new age techniques, from having a web page to having blog entries to having social media posts, having a YouTube channel, having a Facebook Live channel, all that great stuff. Then there's kind of old school stuff, for old age, if you want to call it, but old school stuff comprised of things like speaking engagements, networking activities, media interviews, press interviews, just socializing with people that might be in your peer groups, joining affinity groups, joining business groups that are part of your area. And what you really want to do, again, is think about, well, what are you good at, right? If you're good at public speaking, then seek out speaking opportunities. If you like talking to people, random people that you've never met before, and you're good at making conversation, then go to those networking events. But if you hate people and if you fear public speaking, then those probably aren't the best outlets for you. So if you're scratching your head saying, well, look, I hate people and I hate doing speeches, what can I do? Well, then you can bring your stuff online, okay? You can have a website. You can have a really active
Portfolio
blog. A portfolio,
of work. Yes.
a blog post that is more, you write it and put it up there, and then you can draw people to it. How would you do it? Through social media posts. You put something on LinkedIn that has a link to your blog, then people can see how you're an influencer and then read about how you're an influencer. If you like presenting but don't like doing it to a live audience, do something on YouTube, do something on Facebook Live, all right? The key with it is that you pick the things that you're good at, because that's going to be more attractive to people than when where you're unsure or where you're uneasy.
And this goes back to, well, I have a couple questions here regarding like your brand continuity across channels or distribution channels, whatever it might be, right? So you have your blog, YouTube. You're building an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Do people have challenges in your experience managing that?
Absolutely. The most important thing when you're doing any sort of outbound promotion of yourself is consistency. So what that means, it's everything from using the same name and title and description of your company to using the same picture. All right. Yeah. And to having a reliable, consistent stream of stuff that you're doing. So what do I mean by that? Yep. If you are someone that is deciding to post on Facebook, or you are deciding to do something on Instagram or Twitter, you can't just do it once and then say, okay, I've done it, and never do it again. You've got to keep it up. So what I always advise people to do is to put together, it sounds goofy, but a calendar or a schedule for yourself. Sure. Kind of like when we were back at college, like when I was at Cornell. Marketing 101, right? Exactly. Put together a schedule for yourself and say on, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to post on these sites. I'm going to send out my newsletter, if you have a newsletter. I'm going to send out my newsletter on Friday. Yep. And that's manageable. And if you really want to get specific, you could even do specific times. For example, Facebook on a Sunday afternoon is a really popular time to post. Why? Because research has shown that a lot of people actually look at Facebook on the weekends, and specifically Sunday afternoon. If you're targeting that kind of 30 to 40, 50 crowd, that's a great time to go active on Facebook. 11:30 on a Tuesday night is probably not the best time to be on Facebook because they're probably all asleep. So you have to think about having the consistent image across the channels, having a predictable schedule, and doing it when a time when your audience is going to be paying attention. And
all this information is available. You can Google this and find all this out.
Yeah, you can.
Right? Best time to post video.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all there. Yeah.
Tweets and so on.
Yeah.
To what degree do you encourage people to bring in the personal component? Or do people care? Like I was thinking about this in your title. I'm a father. I'm a motorcycle mechanic. I'm this or that.
I think the more real you can be, the more attractive you are to people.
Right.
We've become a society where people are incredibly open. If you look at the Kardashians, for example, they pretty much put everything about themselves online and out to the world. And their audience loves it. That's not for everybody. So my advice is be real, be human. But again, talk about the stuff that you want to talk about. You don't have to talk about stuff that you're not proud of or stuff that you're not comfortable discussing.
You're going to tend to be inconsistent when you do that anyway.
Yeah, that's
if you're not passionate about it.
That's right. Stick to what you love. Be honest with people. People also like to see failure. So if there have been things that, challenges that you've overcome, talk about it. Talk about what the challenge was, why it was so hard, and how you overcame it. People love that stuff. And what that does is it makes your brand more real, because none of us are perfect, right? I always say we all have stuff that we're good at. We have stuff that we're great at. We have stuff that we really are terrible at. No one is perfect. So if you could kind of be humble and be honest and be real, you're going to make yourself and your brand that much more attractive.
I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball. Can you tell me about some of the lectures that you deliver at Cornell? Who your audience is there? Because I know that you coach and help people of all ages.
Yes.
Right? But you teach a couple of courses at Cornell.
I do.
Tell me about them.
So at Cornell, I'm focused in CAL's, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, in the communication department, focused on branding and e-branding specifically.
Okay.
And the goal is really to empower college students, juniors and seniors, to not just think about their social media posts, but to think about the totality of those posts and how that really forms your e-identity. And as importantly, once you get out of Cornell or any other school, is how you can take that e-identity that you've started and leverage it and turn it into kind of your business brand, your business portfolio. So what we do is we walk students through everything from, okay, here are the opportunities, both traditional and old school. Here are ideas for how you could showcase yourself. And honestly, here's some things you probably shouldn't do. Because as we all know, once stuff goes out on the internet, it's really, really, really hard to bring it down.
Right.
And sometimes students don't think necessarily about that factor, and they might post things or put pictures of stuff that they don't want to have chasing them 5-10 years from now. So we really talk to students about, what's right for you, what's good for enhancing your brand, and again, taking them back to that first step of, what is it that you want to share about yourself? What is it? What direction do you want to take your career in once you get out of Cornell? And then we help them put together a pathway for how to do that.
What about some common pitfalls? I was reading your blog post about this. What are some mistakes that people tend to make that you see, patterns in behavior?
Well, first thing is people use pictures. It sounds silly, but people use pictures of themselves that are like decades old, okay?
Yeah.
this is not Tinder. So if you don't look like the person that you have on your website, get a new headshot.
It's unsettling for people to meet someone.
It is. It is.
You think they're 20 years younger, but they're not.
They're not. No. And you know, we don't. None of us like to age. You know, I was discussing this with people this week. Like, if I could just pick an age, I think I would pick 33 and just stick with 33.
Yeah, that was great.
But unfortunately, time goes on.
Sure.
So you want to have a picture of you now that you use that's current, or that at least looks somewhat related to you.
Get a professional headshot.
Yeah, get a professional headshot.
They can touch up your photo and
they can.
fix it for
it's
you.
amazing what they can do. But more importantly, it's who you are.
Yes.
And it's part of that whole thing of being true and being real, that if you have a picture of who you are now, or relatively within the past 5 years of what you look like, it's going to make you a more real person. That's one common pitfall. The second thing is people like to say that they're an expert on this or the only one that does that. And the truth of the matter is, there are a lot of people that do things that are very, very similar, right? There are lots of people that teach communications. There are lots of people that can talk to you about branding. There are lots of people that are great runners or great athletes. So what you want to do is figure out your unique aspect to it. What is it that you offer in that sector? So don't say you are the expert, because you're probably not.
Yeah.
Take credit where it's due and where you can really back it up. And I think
I'm passionate about something. I'm a lifelong learner.
Correct.
Okay.
And you know, the more the track record you have in a sector, the better off it is. Talk about that stuff. I mean, I've been teaching college now for 10 years, which I still can't believe we've gotten there.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you ask me about, you know, teaching branding or public speaking or communication to people, I've been doing it for 10 years. I've worked with thousands of students from all over the world. I do feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable. Am I the only one in the world that has this background? No, absolutely not.
Right.
But I feel like I have a good understanding, right? And that's what I would say in my description. So I think it's the picture, it's saying too much about yourself, taking too much credit where credit really is not due.
Yeah.
And I think the third pitfall is sometimes not taking credit where you should. You are your brand. And if you don't blow your own horn, no one will.
Right.
So you really, if you have an accomplishment, you should say it. Don't be afraid to say it, but be humble when you do it. You know, to me, I think humility goes back to what you were saying before about being a real person and being a real brand. You know, talk about the things that you've done really well at, and then it's also okay to talk about where you've had missteps, because I think it makes you more relatable as a person.
And proactivity is the name of the game here.
Proactivity is the name of the game.
That's something that people aren't inclined to do. You know, this idea that I'm tooting my own horn and so on.
Yeah, you've got to be proactive. I mean, you can do it in a really humble way. I know for myself, I've been teaching for 10 years. I've been in the communications field for crazily almost 3 decades. I just had a book come out, which is fantastic. But these aren't things that I write on my chest. I just say them when they come up in conversation.
Right.
And but I would be short-selling myself if I didn't know how to frame it, if I didn't know how to talk about my experience base, if I didn't bring in things that were relevant, because those things all help enhance your credibility. When people come to you for help or advice, they want to know that they have someone who has a background in that subject matter. They want to know that you have experience in dealing with a lot of different situations. And if you don't talk about your accomplishments, they're not going to know that.
We had a conversation last year, I think it was, about how your personal brand can help elevate your company's profile, or something to that degree. We had discussed just a few moments ago about aligning a CEO's personal values with the company's mission and so on. Can you talk about that, like the personal brand as part of something greater? Whether
absolutely.
It's a company or a business endeavor.
So if you look at Amazon and Jeff Bezos, if you look at Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, if you look at Microsoft and Bill Gates and Paul Allen, if you look at, I guess look at those three, really, they're all tech companies.
Sure.
Steve Jobs and Apple, that's the fourth tech company.
Yep.
The ideals of the founder, the beliefs of the founders really have trickled down into the way the organization works. Take Apple, for example. Steve Jobs believed in ingenuity and believed in simplicity. Those were two values that were really core to his heart. And if you look at Apple kind of version 2.0, once the little like rectangular box thing went away and the new version came out, and the iPad and all the other iDevices, Jobs' whole vision was that he would create products that were beautifully designed, ingenious in the way that they worked, but also simple. And that paradigm, even though he's passed away years ago, that still lives on within the organization. It's still core to the heart. If you look at Bezos, And he started selling books online, back in the day with Amazon.
Yeah.
And now he's almost in everyone's life in every corner of the world, so it seems. He started with a simple concept, but what he's always tried to do is push the envelope. Where can I go? Where can I take this? Where can I take that? That's something that he fundamentally believes in, that he's brought into the culture of his company. Google, the same way. The founders there, they started with a brilliant but simple search engine. They've been expanding and expanding. And their whole thing, just like Bezos, is let's try it. So the culture of the organization, people are empowered to try things. People are told to run with the idea. And worst thing, it doesn't work out, right? But if those companies didn't have that spirit of adventure and that spirit of kind of pursuit of a dream, none of them would be up where they are today. That goes back to the way the company was founded and to the people that started it.
Right. So it's like an evolution of
It is.
the three about me to something like a mission statement.
Absolutely.
Something that borders on, an elevator pitch,
It is.
so to speak, right?
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
And it permeates everything you do.
It does.
Exactly. I wanted to ask about the assessment component of, are there tools that people can use? How do we get started? I know we talked about just kind of going old school with the pros and cons list and so on. Are there tools that people can use to make this easier?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I sort of have gotten to know myself through two things. One is the concept of self-exploration, which goes back to a cup of coffee and a pad and a piece of paper,
right.
A piece of paper and pencil. So that's, kind of how I do it. And also taking criticism from others. You're good at this, but you're really not so good at that. Or you don't come across so well when you do this. That stuff I really take to heart. In my teaching, I always tell my students, I read at the end of term surveys, I read all the line comments. Sometimes hard to read, but I read them, and I've actually adjusted my syllabi based upon student comments, because at the end of the day, they're the audience. And at the end of the day, my connection to them is the most important thing. So if they don't like the way that I'm teaching, or they don't like the way that I explain stuff, I need to tweak my style to fit there. So I really do believe in taking feedback from others. I think it's really
evaluations.
important. Yeah, and just 360 evaluations at work and all that kind of good stuff, because sometimes people see things in you that you don't see in yourself.
That's right.
A second way of doing it is going online, and there are tons of personality tests. There's the Myers-Briggs test, there's the Big Five test, and there's a whole bunch of others. And those things, if you sit down and take them, they really can help you either confirm or reveal things about yourself. So it may come back, you might take the Myers-Briggs and you come up with your letters and it's like, oh, that is me completely. Or it may reveal something about yourself that you didn't realize. And the same thing with the Big Five. So a personality test is a really great way to start with that base foundation of the brand building. So you can kind of think about, okay, well, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I know I'm good at, and this is what someone else said about me that I never thought about. I know for myself, I never thought I would be teaching in college. And the way it started was a conversation with someone who I didn't know very well. And she said to me, God, you'd be a great professor. And I said no immediately, because my parents were both PhDs.
It wasn't part of your story at that point.
No, it was not. And I never thought it would be, because I swore I would never be a college professor.
Got it.
Because my mom and dad were.
Yeah.
And then someone offered me a chance to do it. And first day, first class, I was like, this is what I was meant to do. It just kind of clicked.
Really?
And
no trepidation?
None.
You weren't nervous?
None.
Yeah,
none.
You don't seem like you're ever nervous.
Based
on
periodically it does happen.
Okay.
But I wasn't nervous at all. And I realized one of the things that I'm good at is the art of conversation and talking to people and explaining things.
Yeah.
I'm actually better when I'm unscripted than when I'm scripted. Because especially now, I know my areas well enough that if I have to think about, well, what's on the slide behind me, it almost slows me down.
Yeah.
Because I've been teaching the same thing for about 10 years now, and I've worked in the industry for almost 30. At this point, I'm able to kind of pull together experiences and ideas and just put them into a lecture. So I always tell my students, I'm like a one-hit wonder. Like, you need to come and take notes, because there may be this occasional slide that goes up on the monitor, but most of it is just me talking and teaching, and believe it or not, writing on the board and having them take notes. And the thing is, the kids love it, because that's not the way most teaching is done these days. In most places, it's done these days by kind of point, click, and talk. And I'm going pretty old school in what I do. And I love it, and they seem to really enjoy it. So, but again, if you had told me I would be teaching now 15 years ago, I would have told you were nuts, absolutely crazy.
I like your website,
Thank you.
presentingperfection.com. So it's a great way to think about the steps.
Yeah.
There's a 5-part blog post that will be accompanying this video as well. So tell us about your website real quick, because I really encourage people to check this out.
I appreciate that. So what we've done is we've taken the concept of public speaking and presenting and branding, and we've kind of lumped it into two different websites now.
Okay.
So there's presentingperfection.com, which is the site that kind of is all encompassing about public speaking and representing yourself and branding. And then there's something called Communication Insights, which is cominsights.com.
Okay.
And with that one, we have the shared blog post. But in that one, we also are focused on helping you PR yourself if you want to, or if you're a PR company, helping to PR you, or helping to fix a brand that may not be working in the marketplace like the way that you want to.
Right.
And so the both of them kind of work in concert with each other. But the blogs are really meant, the blogs on branding specifically, are really meant to help people understand the fundamentals that go into helping to identify and create that core brand and that core brand value. And then how you're going to take it and roll it out into the marketplace.
Right.
I see it as kind of a 3-step process of conceiving, creating, and curating your brand. So conceiving is where we do the initial part of, okay, who am I? What am I a rock star at? What am I not so good at? Let's put the not so good stuff away and take those rock star techniques. And then how am I going to bring it to light? So that's
the mechanics
conceive it,
of it.
You create it through the social media platforms and through traditional platforms of, talking to people, networking, public speaking, maybe a media interview, stuff like that. And how long is that? That's usually I would say 6 months, a year, 2 years. It depends upon who you are and where you want to go. And then the curation part, curating it, it's like a museum, right? You're like a museum curator. You have a gallery of stuff, a gallery of techniques. And periodically, it's good to shift it up. So like for myself personally, I was doing a lot of work with kids in schools, my university teachings, a lot with blog posts, a lot with the website. And about 1.5 years ago, I really started doing more public speaking myself, talking about the branding concept and all of that. And what that's led to is some media articles, some potential TV stuff. But it was part of that, for myself, part of that curation process, because I felt like, okay, we had gotten the website down. We had gotten the basics of the programs down. We had the blog. We had the newsletter. What could we do next? Well, I could go out and speak and actually practice what I preach. And it's been a lot of fun. And it's been well received, which is awesome to see. So it's something that I've gone through myself. And when I was thinking about, well, how did I get here? It really was kind of the 3 C's. It really was this conceiving, creating, and curating. And it's a process that for me is constantly going on. It doesn't stop. You never get to a point with your brand where you're like, okay, I'm good.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think people are. I would imagine that people think about it as, okay, I'm done here.
Yeah, you're never done.
I've set it up, but everybody's work in progress,
yeah,
including yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, like, if you're not living, you're dead. I know that sounds extreme, but like to me, every day is a new day, and every day is a new chance to be your brand, to live your brand, and to live a different part of it. I really feel like you should follow up on every opportunity. I really feel like we should all even peek around the crack of the door if it's slightly open. I literally pursue everything that comes to me. Even if it's something that I don't really think is right, I check it out, because at least I've checked it out. The worst thing I could do is just say no to something without investigating it, because you never know what the opportunity is going to bring about. That's the way the book happened. I was approached by someone and I was like, oh, come on, this is not me.
Right.
But then it turned out it became me. And I'm so thankful that I did it. And it's been so well received. But the thing about it is, unless I had tried, I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't have it. It wouldn't be part of me. And so that's the thing I encourage everybody to do is, you start, as I said, you start with those core brand values of who you are and where you want to go and where you want to take it. You then look at the social media tools, the old school techniques that you can help bring it to life. You then curate it with things that you're good at. But you also have to build into that the unexpected, because the unexpected may take you and your brand in a direction that you never thought possible.
That's a great place to wrap up the conversation, which is really good advice, which is to constantly ensure that you're getting out of your comfort zone. I think that's helped me in various aspects of my life.
If you're comfortable, then you need to figure out something else to do.
Perfect.
Yes. So it's good advice.
Thank you for joining us today, Kathryn.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Excellent. Great. Thanks.